imagine being born into this like totally alien landscape where you are immediately starved.
Oh, wow. That is a bleak start.
Right. But seriously, gravity feels completely crushing. It's just pulling you down against a rough, rocky floor.
Okay.
And any attempt to move feels like, well, trying to swim through wet cement. And your only hope for survival in this literal ticking clock scenario is to somehow grow and inflate a balloon inside your own body.
I mean, it sounds like a science fiction survival thriller, honestly.
It really does.
But that is the literal everyday reality for millions of microscopic creatures that are taking their very first breaths right inside our living rooms.
yeah.
The stakes could not be higher, and the margin for error is basically zero.
And that is exactly the world we are stepping into today. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we're going to act as your guides into a space that is incredibly easy to overlook.
Yeah, the microscopic ecosystem of an ordinary aquarium.
Exactly. So our source material today is this highly specific, totally fascinating personal journal entry. It's from April 20th, 2026.
A great find, by the way.
Oh, it's so good. It's written by a really dedicated aquarist named Ang. The entry is titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 237.
Part 237. That is dedication.
Right. Ang has been at this a while, but in this entry, Ang is documenting the hidden drama of fish fry. And just to set the table for you listening, fry is the term for newly hatched baby fish.
Yeah, and what makes Ang's journal entry so compelling is that it's essentially an evolutionary speed run.
Oh, I like that term, speed run.
Well, it's true. I mean, we humans are, biologically speaking, luxurious creatures.
We really are. We just take our time.
Right. We have the time and the parental support to just be completely helpless for months or even years.
Yeah, just lying there.
But a fish fry does not have that luxury. Ang is watching a creature fundamentally reinvent its own anatomy.
And its entire relationship with the physical world, right?
Exactly. And all of this happens over the course of just a few days.
It's wild. And as a reader, you just get pulled right into the intensity of it. It really feels like, I don't know, peeking behind the curtain of reality.
It does.
So, okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the literal bottom. Because, according to Ang's observations, that is where this whole journey begins.
Yeah, the absolute bottom of the tank.
Right. Immediately after hatching, these tiny fries do almost nothing. They just stay near the bottom, mostly wriggling in place.
Just wriggling.
Yeah. They stick close to the parent fish for protection, which, makes total sense. But Ang notes they aren't actively eating anything from the environment yet.
No, they aren't.
Their primary nutrition comes entirely from absorbing their own yolk sac.
Which is, frankly, an incredible biological mechanism.
That's so weird to think about.
It is, because we often think of a yolk as just the yellow part of an egg.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that a growing embryo sits inside of.
Yeah, like a chicken egg.
Right. But for these fry, they hatch while still attached to it. They're essentially born with an external stomach that is just, well, slowly dissolving straight into their bloodstream.
It's the ultimate built-in survival backpack.
That's a good way to put it.
I picture it like a rocket launching with an external fuel tank,
Yeah.
It's pumping just enough energy to keep the life support systems online.
Precisely.
But, okay, here's where I have to pause and challenge the strategy a bit.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, if you are born into this brand new, wide-open, watery world, why just sit on the floor and wriggle?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Right. Why not use that rocket fuel to go explore immediately? If I woke up with a built-in lunchbox, my first instinct would be to go see what's out there.
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's tempting to think that way,
Yeah.
but you have to adjust your perspective to the microscopic scale.
Okay, how so?
Physics just works differently when you are a fraction of an inch long. At that size, water doesn't feel like the fluid we swim in.
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
Because of the scale and the viscosity, to a newly hatched fry, water feels incredibly thick.
Really?
Yeah, it's like trying to drag yourself through a pool of cold honey.
Oh, wow. So just moving an inch is basically an Olympic event for them.
Exactly. It comes down to a brutal accounting problem. Every single muscle twitch burns precious calories.
And they don't have many to spare.
Right. For a creature this small, energy is the most limited currency it has. Because they have their food physically attached to them, expending energy to swim around, searching for something they don't even need yet, that would be a massive, potentially fatal waste of calories.
Okay, that makes sense.
They're weighed down by the sac, gravity pins them to the floor, and they just accept it. The wriggling isn't some failed attempt to swim.
Oh, it's not.
No, it's just the mechanical byproduct of their internal organs rapidly developing.
Yeah.
They are prioritizing invisible internal growth over external movement.
Wow. Okay, that reframes the whole scene for me. They aren't helpless. They're just like charging on the dock.
That's a great analogy.
It's a hyper-efficient, passive state of receiving nutrients. But here's the catch with external fuel tanks, right?
They run out.
They run empty.
Mhm.
And Aang notes that as that yolk sac nears depletion, the fry hit a terrifying biological deadline.
The passive phase is over.
Yeah. If they stay on the bottom now, they will literally starve. They have to fundamentally change their relationship with gravity.
And this is where the physical transformation has to match the environmental pressure. The yolk sac disappearing is the catalyst.
Okay.
The physical weight of it vanishes, which triggers an anatomical marvel. They inflate their swim bladder.
Right. And as they achieve, quote, neutral buoyancy, which frees them to leave the bottom.
Yes.
But, okay, this is the part of the journal that completely blew my mind, and I really need you to explain the mechanics of this.
I will do my best.
Because my reading of it is this. Their food runs out, and their biological response to starvation is to magically inflate a tiny internal balloon so they can float.
That's essentially it.
But how? How does a microscopic fish living entirely underwater inflate a balloon when it doesn't have access to air?
It is an absolute masterpiece of biology. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you're absolutely right to ask how it happens because it seems physically impossible.
It really does. They're underwater.
Right. They aren't taking a breath of air to blow up this balloon. Instead, they use something called a gas gland.
It's a gas gland.
Yeah. This gland is wrapped in a really dense network of microscopic blood vessels. When the fry needs to inflate its swim bladder, this gland starts producing lactic acid.
Wait, lactic acid, the same stuff that makes human muscles burn when we work out.
The very same.
Way.
Yes. So by secreting lactic acid into the bloodstream right next to the swim bladder, the gland drastically lowers the pH of the blood in that localized area.
It makes it acidic.
Exactly. And when fish blood becomes acidic, the hemoglobin inside it, the part that carries oxygen, suddenly loses its ability to hold on to that oxygen.
Wait. So it basically forces the blood to drop its oxygen payload.
Exactly. You nailed it. The oxygen gas literally bubbles out of the bloodstream and diffuses directly into the empty cavity of the swim bladder.
That is insane.
They are literally mining dissolved gas out of their own blood to inflate this internal balloon. And as it fills, they become lighter. Gravity stops winning the tug of war.
That is just staggering. They are running a high-level chemistry lab inside their own bodies just to stop sinking.
It's brilliant.
And suddenly, they are weightless. Imagine being that tiny, struggling in the honey-like water, dragging this heavy sack around.
Exhausting.
Then the sack disappears, the chemistry lab fires up, your internal balloon inflates, and you just lift off. It's like an astronaut who has been, I don't know, crawling on the floor of a centrifuge, suddenly experiencing zero gravity.
That's a perfect visual. And neutral buoyancy isn't just a neat trick for them. It is the mandatory gateway to their independence.
Mandatory, right?
Yeah, without that gas-filled bladder, they would expend all their remaining energy just fighting gravity to stay off the floor.
Oh, because every twitch costs calories.
Exactly. They would exhaust themselves to death before they ever found their first meal. The inflation of the bladder solves the energy crisis of swimming.
And once they aren't fighting gravity, they don't just hover there. The physical release naturally pushes their boundaries upward.
They start moving.
Right, which brings us right into the next major milestone Aang observes. Once they achieve that buoyancy, the fry travel up through the water column and reach the surface.
Yes.
And Aang points out a very specific behavior here. At the surface, they can be seen gulping air, and this marks their transition into active foragers.
It's a massive cognitive shift. It's not just physical anymore.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. This upward journey feels exactly like a video game character unlocking the final massive map of a level.
Oh, like that.
You start trapped in the basement, literally wriggling in the dirt. Then you unlock the levitation ability. But breaking the surface, that's unlocking the open world.
It really is.
They've gone from helpless blobs to actual predators looking for prey.
They absolutely are predators now. They're just operating on a scale that requires a microscope to truly appreciate. But, you know, what really stands out in this section of the journal is the power of pure observation.
What do you mean?
Well, Aang isn't putting these fry under a microscope to inspect their digestive tracts.
Right.
Aang isn't doing blood tests to see if the swim bladder is fully functional.
No, Aang is just staring at a glass box in a living room.
Right. And yet, Aang deduces a complex biological truth just by watching. Aang sees them reach the surface. Aang sees the gulping of air.
Yeah.
And whether that gulping is to fully top off the swim bladder or maybe to develop secondary breathing organs, Aang recognizes it as the defining behavioral trigger.
It's the signal.
Exactly. That tiny, almost invisible visual cue correlates perfectly with the fry's internal readiness to hunt. The moment they hit that surface boundary, they stop being passive inhabitants of the water and they start interacting with the food web.
So what does this all mean for the person taking care of them? Because this introduces a massive logistical nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you have a tank full of microscopic predators whose hunting instincts have just switched on, you have to feed them.
Yes, you do.
And you can't just walk over and sprinkle a pinch of regular fish food flakes into the water.
Definitely not.
To a fry that size, dropping a standard fish flake into the tank would be like someone dropping an entire billboard on your head.
The scale is entirely mismatched.
Yep.
You can't offer a creature a meal that is 10 times larger than its own mouth.
Right.
Especially when that creature is hardwired to hunt moving prey. The food has to match the predator's capabilities perfectly.
So how does Aang actually solve this? The journal notes a few strategies. At one point, Aang mentions tiny artificial fish pellets.
Yes.
But there's a problem. The fry aren't always ready for them. They are basically wild animals right now, right?
Very tiny wild animals.
Yeah. An inanimate pellet sinking through the water doesn't trigger that brand new predatory instinct. So Aang uses what I can only describe as a brilliant Trojan horse strategy.
Oh, the plants.
Yes. Aang introduces live aquatic plants into the fry tank.
And this raises an important question about caretaking, because this is where the fish keeper becomes a true ecologist. It's an incredibly elegant solution.
The genius of it is that Aang isn't feeding the fish the plants.
No.
Aang writes that these plants naturally contain infusoria, and the journal states this method has worked successfully for, quote, all these moons.
All these moons.
Yeah.
I love that phrasing.
It's an ancient, reliable trick. You put a plant leaf into the water, and to the untrained eye, it's just aquarium decoration.
Right.
But to the fry, it's a delivery mechanism for a microscopic buffet.
We really should unpack what that buffet actually looks like, because infusoria is a bit of a catch-all term.
Yeah, what is it exactly?
Well, it's a word that hides how wild this microecosystem is. When we talk about infusoria in this context, we are talking about a dense jungle of unicellular life.
Okay.
We're talking protozoans, paramecia, rotifers, tiny ciliates.
The stuff we all looked at under microscopes in high school biology class.
Exactly.
The little translucent blobs zooming around.
Yes, those guys. And aquatic plants naturally cultivate a biofilm on their leaves and stems. It's this slimy, nutrient-rich layer where all these microscopic creatures congregate to feed and breed. So when Aang drops a plant into the tank, it's not a salad. Aang is dropping in a fully functioning, wildly active savanna of microscopic prey.
That is so cool. To the fry, that leaf is basically the Serengeti.
That's a great way to look at it.
They can hover around the edges of the plant, utilizing that brand new neutral buoyancy, and pick off the infusoria one by one.
Exactly.
It perfectly triggers their new hunting instincts because the infusoria are actually moving, darting, and trying to survive.
And it really highlights a crucial skill for anyone maintaining a captive ecosystem, which is ecological empathy.
Ecological empathy. I like that.
Aang doesn't just indiscriminately throw food in and hope for the best. Aang understands exactly what the fry are capable of at that precise moment.
Right.
Their mouths are microscopic, their swimming is newly developed, so provide microscopic, slow-moving prey concentrated in one area.
But the menu doesn't stay static, right? Because the fry don't stay static.
No, they grow fast.
Right. The journal notes an upcoming plan to transition them. Aang writes about a plan to resume cultivating BBS in the coming days as an alternative food source.
BBS being baby brine shrimp,
Okay.
another staple of the fish keeper's arsenal, and a clear step up the evolutionary ladder for these fry.
How so? Are they just bigger?
They are slightly larger, yes, but more importantly, baby brine shrimp are much more active swimmers than the infusoria clinging to a plant leaf.
Oh, they move more.
Yeah, they jerk, they dart, they swim all through the open water column. So by introducing BBS, Aang is forcing the fry to upgrade their hunting skills.
They can't just be lazy.
Right, they can't just graze near a leaf anymore. They have to use those newly inflated swim bladders to actively pursue targets through open space.
It's a perfectly choreographed curriculum.
It really is.
It starts with the yolk sac zero effort, pure absorption. Then they graduate to the infusoria on the plant's microscopic, slow-moving prey that requires basic buoyancy and simple targeting.
Yes.
Then the baby brine shrimp, larger, faster prey requiring active pursuit in the open water.
Exactly.
And eventually, once they are big enough and their brains have developed enough to recognize non-moving food, they can graduate to those artificial fish pellets Aang mentioned.
It is a delicate, escalating dance. And the caretaker is managing the tempo.
Yeah.
If Aang misses the visual cue, if Aang doesn't notice them gulping air at the surface and delays adding the infusoria-loaded plants, the fry could starve despite their new hunting abilities.
The timing has to be flawless.
Flawless.
It gives you a profound respect for the invisible, high-stakes drama playing out inside a glass box sitting in the corner of a room. It's literally a full ecosystem simulation.
It is.
Let's take a step back and look at the whole arc we just walked through, because the sheer amount of life experience these fry pack into a few days is staggering.
It's hard to wrap your head around. They begin as these heavily weighted, wriggling larvae on the floor, doing nothing but metabolizing an attached food source to fund their internal development.
Right. Then, facing starvation as that fuel runs dry, they run a localized chemistry lab to pull oxygen from their own blood. They inflate a gas bladder that defeats gravity. They lift off, float to the surface, and cross the boundary into active foragers.
And finally, they meet a caretaker who reads their subtle behavioral cues.
Yeah.
And this caretaker curates a shifting menu of micropredation, from the teeming vital films of plant leaves to the open water hunt for brine shrimp to carry them into adulthood.
It is an absolute triumph of survival, and it makes you realize how much is happening just beyond the limits of our normal vision.
It certainly does. And, there's one detail from Aang's notes that I think offers a fascinating lens for how we view our own environments.
Oh, what's that?
Well, Aang recognized that the simple act of the fry gulping air at the surface wasn't just a quirky behavior.
Right.
It was the visual indicator that a total revolution had occurred in their development, their diet, and their entire relationship with the world.
A tiny signal for a massive change.
Exactly. So if such a tiny, easily missed behavioral shift completely changes a microscopic creature's interaction with its world, what subtle, barely noticeable shifts are happening in your own daily environment right now?
Oh, wow.
What tiny changes in the people, the systems, or the habits around you are quietly revolutionizing the ecosystem you live in, entirely under the radar?
That really forces you to pay closer attention, doesn't it?
It really does.
The little things are never really just little things. Keep that in mind the next time you assume progress only happens in big, obvious leaps. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes open and keep observing the invisible worlds around you.